All right, folks, we are now into it. The final part of this tier list of all the non Best Picture top 8 movies of the first half of the 2020s. And we, of course, begin in 2020, the year of the pandemic. And we will begin this up with our last film to date to receive a standalone Best Director nomination, but not make it into the picture lineup. The Denmark film and our international feature winner that year, Another Round, which earned a directing nomination for Thomas Vinterberg, and I was so happy I called that prediction correctly after he got that BAFTA nomination. This one is going into S. This is a fantastic film here. Other than Flight, this is another movie why you should never drink in general, but the way how the story was really told well from the script from Vinterberg and Tobias Lindholm, um, they really did a fantastic job on this because it's kind of interesting. This movie is kind of almost like for me with Dazed and Confused, the Richard Linklater film, where I didn't like it when I was watching it, but when the scenes got a lot better and better, and then when you think about the previous scenes, you ended up liking the movie a lot more so. And that's what ended up happening. Like obviously, when we follow all these four teachers doing this alcoholic round of them doing drinks to try to have more connection with their students, it obviously goes well for them as well to get a better connection with their students, but also kind of in a sour mood, not just for their jobs, but some of them with their relationships. Especially when it comes to the situation with the soccer coach, played by Thomas Bo Larson, who gives a fantastic performance in this. Um, but obviously, this was a very passionate movie, not just from Vinterberg, but more specifically that this was a massive passion for his daughter, who unfortunately tragically died in a motorcycle. I think it was like some sort of vehicle accident in Italy. And this movie had to change a little bit, I think, when it came to the writing and then how the film was going to go and to make it more of a bit of a reality purpose. And that movie was obviously meant a lot for his daughter, and I can see where they really kind of had to change a lot to make it a little bit more realistic as possible, and that's like massive credit to not just also really that Vinterberg really loved his daughter, of course, but also why she really wanted to be involved a lot with this movie. Yeah, Vinterberg definitely deserved that Best Directing nomination, even though it didn't make it my personal top five, but it was like a massive battle between that and Wolf Walkers for that fifth slot for me, if you follow me on the awards expert app. But definitely, yeah, this would have been a great Best Picture nomination, but a fantastic directing one to be precise. Matt Mikkelsen is pretty good, but I think Thomas Bo Larson kind of stood out a lot more than him. Next up, Borat's subsequent movie film, delivery of ridiculous bribe to American regime for make benefits once glorious nation of Kazakhstan. This obviously did fit well in the time for 2020, and this is not for any political reasons. It's just that this movie was it's just uncomfortable for me to watch. And obviously, other than earning its adapted screenplay nomination like the first film did, it also earned a supporting actress nomination for Maria Bakalova. And the whole Borat daughter story connection, especially during the 2020 presidential campaign, and even the pandemic, it's just especially the Rudolph Giuliani scene. Oh gosh, I'm not gonna go into that territory, but yeah, I obviously yes, this is a mockumentary, of course, but if they do make a third film, like if there is a third Borat, if Sacha Baron Cohen ever plans on one, but oh gosh, I, I'm glad I don't have to go back to watch this film as well as the first one. Speaking of political things, here is Hillbilly Elegy from Ron Howard, which earned a supporting actress nomination for Glenn Close, as well as a makeup and hairstyling nomination. If she did one for The Wife, I don't think this would have not been nominated for her performance. Makeup still. Obviously, for those who don't know, this is the Ron Howard biopic on J.D. Vance of how he was as a kid, and obviously the massive bad relationship between his mother and his grandmother. His mother played by Amy Adams, and obviously he's now our vice president currently in the U.S. Um, if you're watching this sometime after 2028, or depending on what happens, depending after that year's election, we don't know because I'm in 2025 right now. But yeah, I did not like this movie. Not for political reasons. I saw this when I was back during the marathon in 2021, and I just hated this film, I had to give it a double F tier as well here, because the thing is, the one thing that I think, like, it's not one of the worst films I've seen. I might go back to this more so than The Lovely Bones. But the one thing that I think what made this movie terrible, it was poorly edited. I think the film editing in this is absolutely awful, especially that first half hour that makes it absolutely confusing on what is going on here. It's just like, oh, JD is running away from his mother. Oh, we see him in the hospital now, just looking after his mother, and then obviously the whole situation with his grandmother. It's just like, and obviously all the abusiveness. Like, yeah, okay, I do understand. Like, obviously we get to know a little bit about JD's life as a child and how, yeah, obviously his life's not perfect, but if it was told better, probably in a better editing pace or maybe even a writing pace, I think it would have done a lot of better job here. But yeah, obviously, and now every time when I think about JD Vance, I always think about this movie just because I had to watch it because it was nominated for an Oscar for Glenn Close's performance, which I think also earned a Razzie nomination as well. But I'm glad Amy Adams did not get that Best Actress nomination. Now we're into another adaptation of an August Wilson play on Netflix with Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the final film from Chadwick Boseman, which earned him and Viola Davis leading nominations and also won two in the technical categories for makeup and hairstyling, which was mainly Viola Davis' makeup team, and costume designer for Anne Roth. I have to give this one a C. I was kind of a bit disappointed about the story structure of this movie. I think the writing, I feel like, because the thing is, when it came to Fences, the fact that they just had August Wilson had the screenplay right, like Denzel decided not to change anything in August Wilson's script. It's just with Tony Kushner, just like kind of like just had to rewrite, just write the script for them, but not actually doing the screenplay or anything like that. But when you came to somebody having to adapt an August Wilson play instead of actually having August Wilson adapting the play, obviously it's a posthumous thing. I think that's where kind of is not where I think where the issue is. It's like if it's somebody else actually adapting the script that is not August Wilson, it does come a bit odd. Like, yeah, it's just the story of just like a one setting day of a recording and stuff like that, but it's just there's a lot of issues that are kind of going on. It's just mainly like, oh, we're just making a lot of music. But one thing I will state this. Chadwick Boseman is fantastic in this, and he definitely would have been my vote for Best Actor. He really is fantastic in this. Definitely, he would have been my pick over Anthony Hopkins. I mean, oh my gosh, what a swan song for him to end off his career in. I mean, that was a fantastic performance. Although my number one lead performance of the year would be Daniel Kaluuya in Judas and the Black Messiah, but of course he was category fraud. But Boseman would still be my vote here because, oh my gosh, if Kaluuya went leading, I would have gone with Kaluuya. But since if we were going by the actual Oscar nominees, Boseman was fantastic in this. Viola Davis is good, but not great. It's just Boseman really kind of steals the spotlight throughout the rest of the movie. And I mean, just oh wow, even in the final act after he gets the boot, man, especially in dealing with some shoes and obviously with his fellow musicians, man. Like the only reason you specifically need to watch Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is just for Chadwick Boseman's final performance. Here's another adaptation of a play of a stage play, and that is One Night in Miami, the debut feature of Regina King, her directorial debut specifically, written by Kemp Powers, who adapted his own play, who obviously at the same time was writing and co-directing Pixar's Soul, and would later be one of the directors of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I have to give this one. I'm gonna have to give this an E, but it would be an E plus. I don't remember much about this movie. I think the one thing is that obviously it's just like all four of our characters that we do follow. It's just like I think probably the only thing I remember the most is Leslie Odom Jr., but that was mainly because he would have been my vote for supporting actor because I can't state Kaluuya or Lakeith Stanfield because they were both lead performances. So who is the legit more supporting? For me, my legit vote would have been for Leslie Odom Jr. The only thing I remember now is the song "Speak Now" from the film that I just have in my iTunes because I have a playlist of like all the Oscar-nominated songs of this decade so far, as well as the 2010s. Don't have one for the 2000s yet. That could be something in the near future. But when it comes to just specifically with this movie, it's very forgetful, and I didn't even get this when it was released on the Criterion Collection. Next up is Pieces of a Woman, which earned Vanessa Kirby a Best Actress nomination and the only Best Actress candidate that year that did not walk away with a win throughout that season. And just because of that insane Best Actress race that occurred, if Vanessa Kirby did win a BAFTA, I could have almost seen her like win. I don't know if she would win the Oscar because Frances McDormand would have been the big upset. But I was just predicting Kirby because she was the only one that didn't want, so I just did it for the fun of it. But obviously that went to Frances McDormand. I'm giving this one a C. The opening, like the half-hour opening, is just very um shocking of what happens when it comes to the story of obviously this couple losing their child because of this potential nurse that might have killed the child, but we are not really sure how she feels about it or not, especially with now with the relationship with her um, not really husband but more boyfriend played by Shia LaBeouf. And obviously the situations when they have to do, like even after that, whether it be at the potential trial of potentially criminalizing this nurse for potentially killing this child, or or with obviously her, she's not having the great relationship with her husband, or even with her mother, played by Ellen Burstyn, who is fantastic. Burstyn should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actress, honestly, and she would have been my pick for Supporting Actress of 2020. I mean, I'm glad the Critics' Choice recognized her, even though that they are not really a great branch when it comes to nominations, of course, when they try to predict the Oscars. But Burstyn really should have been a Best Supporting Actress nomination. I mean, that would that was just a fantastic role. Shia LaBeouf is actually also pretty good in this role as well, for doing a serious dramatic role that is not like something big like Transformers, of course. It is a fine movie. It's just the performances and the decent script is also pretty good. It just I don't know if well, it's been a while since I've seen this movie. Um yeah, I might actually switch this to a B minus now. I'm gonna actually probably put this now in B minus. So, and I obviously had to fix obviously with the two popes when I had it in C instead of D, as I originally stated in the video. So I did fix that. But yeah, I do think Pieces of Woman I think would now kind of go in the B tier. Now we come into the United States versus Billie Holiday from Lee Daniels, which earned Andra Day a Best Actress nomination, and the second film biopic on Billie Holiday. The first was Lady Sings the Blues from the 70s, starring Diana Ross, which I've not seen. A lot of critics were very mixed on this movie, and some people didn't even like this film. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on this one, but I'm actually going to put this in S. I was blown away when I was watching this movie on Hulu back in 2021. I was just amazed at how great the film was, how it was directed from Lee Daniels. The script was fantastic. Probably, in my opinion, the best script of 2020. Sorry. And also, yeah, Another Round was my personal original screenplay of 2020 as well that same year. So yeah, two of my favorite scripts of the year are in this lineup. Andrew Day, even though it's like a singer playing a singer, even though it just feels lazy in casting, but I think this is one of the cases where it actually did work because Day also had to obviously do a lot of acting stuff as well for this film. In general, other than just her singing, with Billie Holiday's connection with this potential other kind of cop that kind of works, played by Trevante Rhodes, who many of you might know him as the adult Chiron in Moonlight, and obviously with the story of telling the famous song that she is basically calling out racism, that the police would arrest her even just because when she does the song, even with all the health issues she has been dealing with, that the police actually use that to put more of her as a case in that. It is very unfortunate of where Billie Holiday unfortunately had through during her final days. It's just very unfortunate how racist police were at the time, especially, of course, like obviously we have seen, but obviously I know many biopics when you just feel angry about this, and I already talked about this when it came to Straight Outta Compton. And finally, we have Netflix's other film, The White Tiger, from Ramin Barani, starring Adash Gaurav and Priyanka Chopra. And Chopra obviously was her, along with her husband Nick Jonas, announced the nominations that year, so she was pretty happy. I am putting this one in. I'm gonna put this. The story seemed Yeah, I'm gonna put it in a D, but it would be a D minus. The story definitely seemed very interesting. It's just I think this is another one of those cases where sometimes the acting doesn't really do much other than like the whole suspense thriller thing of how this guy hires as a I think like a cab driver or something like that for a famous rich person, and then he obviously builds this massive program. Of course, what he does, but obviously you also have the massive bad relationship with the main rich person and his wife, played by Priyanka Chopra. I think having the mixture of languages might be the thing of having obviously the is it Hindi? uh, of the Hindi language. I don't want to say Indian because I think it's Hindi and English. I think that the mixture of two languages like the mixture of multiple languages. Sometimes it works, but I think in The White Tiger, I think it didn't. I think most of the English is probably mainly coming from Priyanka Chopra, of course. But yeah, I just think like yeah, the story seemed interesting, but I think maybe the dialogue and probably the performances didn't really do much. Uh, I think it would have been interesting if there would have been a better setting of the movie, like if it wasn't like set, like obviously if somebody else did like an adaptation or a remake of this film, I wonder what other settings this movie would be in. Okay, now we're into 2021, and actually I want to mention that the first five films from this year, um, oh, this was actually I think the first time since 2003, or was it three or was it, well, I think it was five. Well, but obviously this was the first time in a while that none of the Best Actress nominated movies were up for Best Picture, but this was the first time ever that none of the Best Actress nominees were nominated at the BAFTAs. So that was kind of pretty unique. So we are going to begin this up with Being the Ricardos, Aaron Sorkin's follow-up to The Trial of the Chicago 7, his biopic on I Love Lucy, specifically the relationship between Desi and Lucy. And it earned three acting nominations for Javier Bardem, Nicole Kidman, and J.K. Simmons. I am giving this one a C. But it would just be an average C. I was kind of really disappointed in this film. The performances, with the exception of J.K. Simmons, like Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem are fantastic in this. In their performances. Especially like I do kind of like how what the story is kind of setting about, but I think it's just the performances that really stood out, and also the cinematography was really really good. I just think maybe the dialogue was probably the problem, I would say, as well as the supporting performances. Like we don't get much a lot of with Nina Ardiana's and J.K. Simmons' performances. I don't understand why J.K. Simmons getting that supporting actor nomination, but Bardem and Kidman, I do understand it. Like they are fantastic in this movie. Yeah, like the costume design, the production design, everything looks great in a technical aspect, but it's just as a narrative, like just it just I think maybe the story is just their sour relationship is probably the one thing I really did not like. If it was like maybe like in the beginning of the show or like during its final time period, like I'm glad it's not an entire period of the entire production of the show. I'll give Sorkin credit on that, but I just think if it didn't have to focus on the bad relationship aspect of this film. Next up is The Eyes of Tammy Faye, which earned both of its Oscars for makeup and hairstyling and Best Actress for Jessica Chastain. This is Michael Showalter's next film. He also obviously did The Big Sick. I am giving this one. I'm also going to give this a C because yeah, the story really seems interesting. Now, unlike like Hacksaw Ridge, I did not see the documentary that this movie is based on. I know it's the 2000 documentary that I believe was nominated at the Indie Spirit Awards. So I have not seen that one still to this day because I think it was impossible to find during the time when I was doing the marathon. So I heard it was like there was a rumor that was on Facebook at one point, but I think it was gone for a while. Yeah. Obviously, the story is also not that great, like being the Ricardos, but Chastain does give a great performance as well as Andrew Garfield. And also works well in the technical aspect from the costumes, the production design, the cinematography, and the makeup. But I can almost say like these two films in general, with being the Ricardos and Tammy Faye, where great performances, great technical aspect, but not a great movie in general, just because the script is just not that interesting, or even how the dialogue even works, even though the acting does prevent it from the characters being unlikable to a bit likable. But yeah, Chastain would have not been my vote for Best Actress. There is somebody that I would have given it to. Next up is The Lost Daughter, Maggie Gyllenhaal's debut feature, which earned 3 nominations for Adapted Screenplay for her, Supporting Actress for Jessie Buckley, our future Oscar winner, and Best Actress for Olivia Colman. I have to give this one. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna give this an E because I'm not going to put it in an F because there is something that I do like about The Lost Daughter. Now, yeah, obviously our main character, is not that likable, and how the story is really told, just ugh, not really that great. Obviously, without this professional her who is just having her time off, in a beach and just dealing with everything that's around the beach except for um, kind of like a student, not a student that she recognizes, but somebody who is also kind of going into the studies that she kind of understands where he's going at. And obviously, with this woman who has like this young mother with a daughter and stuff like that, and obviously it's kind of reminiscing of our main character's relationship with her daughter, where we go into the back scenes from Jessie Buckley, and Buckley I think is the best thing about the movie. I think her scenes are fantastic, and I can see why she got that supporting actress nomination. I really wish the movie was more about that than instead of the present scenes, or just you go in the present and then you just go into the future. But it's primarily focused on our with the past or the present scenes with Coleman's character instead of with Buckley's, and what she kind of does is a bit wrong. Next up is Parallel Mothers from Pedro Almodovar, which earned an original score nomination, and Penelope Cruz got in for Best Actress, which she had no precursors prior to it. And a lot of people were predicting her at the last minute because a lot of people have heard that she was getting some last minute votes because it was one of the last movies a lot of people had to watch. I'm glad she didn't win that because I've although it might would have been a better Oscar win than a Weinstein Oscar for Woody Allen Oscar as well. But I have to put this in E, and I will state this right now: if you get the title, as soon as you get the title, what the movie is, when you get to a certain portion of it, you're not gonna really like where the movie is going. But obviously, it focuses on these two women, obviously pregnant women, one of them played by Penelope Cruz, and some situation that has occurred between the two. I'm not going to go much into it, but if you get the title, what is Parallel Mothers, and if you get the title, yeah, you're not going to be a fan of this movie because you might know where the rest of the film is going if you understand it. This kind of thing is a similar thing what happened to me with Parasite, where I kind of knew where the movie was going. So yeah, I this is another miss for me for Almodovar. I don't know. It's kind of the same things with Pain and Glory. I would go back to talk to her more so than these two, than that and Pain and Glory. Next up, Spencer, Pablo Larraín's second installment of the trilogy, uh, which is, of course, this focuses on Princess Diana during Christmas of 1991, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day, around the time of the beginning stages of her divorce with then Prince Charles. Wow. This has to go in S. I was blown away by this movie. This was my second favorite film of that year, behind No Time to Die. It almost got into double S tier, but I will explain a little bit. But this is what I really want biopics should be, like an unknown period of a specific celebrity, and then you just take it in a span of like 3 or 2 days or something like that, or even a day or so. And I think this movie just really works well on looking at an unknown period of Princess Diana, because you would think, oh, it would just be about the story would be about her meeting, obviously Prince Charles. They would fall in love, they get married, they have the divorce, they have the situation of the kids, and then she obviously, of course, led into her tragic car accident in France. But no, this just specifically focuses during Christmas of 1991, and it's fantastically well made from Pablo Larraín. It's like this is just like what I want more biopics to be, and it's just like this film feels like a real life horror movie, but without the horror aspects, because with the situations where Princess Diana is dealing with when it comes to the privacy of royal family things, even though she's kind of off with the duties, of course, because with the divorce, and obviously with her relationship with her kids, and obviously with all the people that are around her, whether it be from Sally Hawkins or Timothy Spall. I will say the only reason why it prevented getting to double S tier is because some of the supporting characters are not that memorable, honestly. But Kristen Stewart as Princess Diana, holy shit. She gave the performance of 2021 and one of my favorite performances of this decade. I mean, she should have won that Oscar. I'm surprised she was not the front runner after when she was assuming the front runner and then she lost the Golden Globe. She missed SAG and BAFTA. BAFTA, you can understand that, of course, because Prince William is the president of BAFTA, which I think that's kind of unfair to have a royal family be a president of an awards association. But that's just coming from an American's perspective. Um, but yeah, like this feels like it almost feels like why you should never want to be a member of the royal family because of obviously you have some massive restrictions compared to an actual freedom that Diana obviously really wants. And like there's even this one scene where obviously oh gosh, the way she almost uses some sort of like a stapler to almost like staple her arm even though that actually did not happen. It's just more like a dream sequence. Oh gosh, that just really shows how like it just like scary it is to be a member of the royal family. And Stewart's performance and Lorraine's direction really made sure that this movie tells almost like not really the dark depiction of it, but almost like why you should never be a member of the royal family. And just like it just like yeah, she should have won the Oscar for Best Actress. I'm very glad she got the nomination. I was like um like if I saw this movie before nominations, I would have been a lot worried she would have missed, but I would have been super excited and I'm very happy she got this nomination. Next up is Tick Tick Boom, Lin-Manuel Miranda's directorial debut on his adaptation of the musical of the same name, which is also the Jonathan Larson biopic, the man who made the iconic musical Rent. I am giving this one a C. I will state this. Um, there are some great scenes in this movie. I do like some of the numbers, especially 3090, Boho Days, and what was it? It was is the one that Garfield and Vanessa Hudgens does, like the your reaction, like my reaction. I forget the title of the song is. Yeah, some of the songs are pretty good. Robin Jesus does a fantastic performance. I just think maybe I think my issue might be because of the story. Because obviously adapting a musical into a script, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does. It's just that I think maybe there might have been some coldness had with the movie a little bit later on in the film. It's not an extremely cold movie by any means. It feels like obviously with Jonathan Larson's story with the ticking clock, obviously this would kind of almost lead into what I would say a little bit. I would say on Jim Henson a bit when it comes to the defunct TV miniseries and the Jim Henson documentary that would come in a little bit later on. I wonder if they got inspired by this film to do so because of a ticking clock. Even though I think the defunct TV one did a lot better job than this film, honestly, but that's just comparing to a YouTube miniseries. Um, but yeah, Garfield is fine. And he did had a bizarre 2021, not just with that and The Eyes of Tammy Faye, but of course his comeback as Spider-Man in Spider-Man No Way Home, of course, which he's fantastic in. Um, but yeah, I think this musical was just okay. There are some good songs I do go back to, and the Bobo Days is definitely my favorite scene in the entire movie. That earned Garfield the Best Actor nomination, and this one also earned a Best Actor nomination for Denzel Washington, and that is The Tragedy of Macbeth. And this is the legit first time that the Coen brothers are separated as standalone directors, as this is legit Joe Coen 100% by himself. If you do not count like obviously the rules they had at the time for Directors Guild with them being credited as director and Ethan as a producer for their older films before No Country for Old Men. But this is like legit their first time Joe Cohen on his own. Um, I am giving this one an A. I really like this adaptation of Macbeth. This was not my first time watching a Macbeth adaptation. The first was Polanski's adaptation in the 70s that was in the Criterion lineup. It's fine. It did started out good, but then just didn't kind of went to this direction. This direction style, this adaptation from Joe Cohen is very intense. I do think is one of the best adaptations, modern adaptations of a Shakespeare play. Probably the best one so far that we have seen. I know there's like this recent Hamlet adaptation from starring Riz Ahmed, but Wow. Yes, it's even though it's like an American setting with having American actors playing, like obviously this British type of movie. Of course, when you have Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington doing their accents, just speaking Shakespearean dialogue, but it still works very well. Denzel Washington would have been my personal vote for Best Actor. In fact, I would have given the tragedy to Macbeth all the three Oscars it was nominated for, not just for Denzel, but also for production design and cinematography. Um, it should have been up for Best Picture. Catherine Hunter as the witches and the old man, especially those witches. Oh my gosh. How did she not got recognized for supporting actress? Especially not even at BAFTA, they didn't recognize her. I think she was shortlisted, I believe, but didn't make it in the final six. I mean, wow, Joe Cohen did a fantastic job at adapting this Macbeth story. I think some of the other supporting characters, other than McDormand, Hunter, and Denzel's performances, are don't really stand out as much. But the way how the story Cohen adapted the story into the screen format, especially one of the best use of a 4:3 ratio aspect, that's something that Cold War and First Reform did not work well. I think this one really did work well for Bruno Delbonnel's cinematography. And finally, we come into The Worst Person in the World from Joachim Trier, which, other than earning an international feature nominee for Norway, which was guaranteed second place behind Drive My Car, but it earned an out of nowhere nomination for original screenplay for Trier and Eskil Vogt. I am putting this one in A. This movie is really fantastic on the whole relationship story status, but the best thing about this movie that really captivates it is obviously the phenomenal performance from Renate Reinsve, who obviously gives the second best performance of the year right next to Kristen Stewart. Like, they're both neck and neck, but Stewart obviously takes number one, and Reinsve was very close to getting that Best Actress nomination after Worst Person in the World got that out of nowhere original screenplay nomination. Because I would have been upset about that because I was predicting Reinsve until I think from August all the way up to November, but then after when she kind of disappeared a bit, I took her out in December. She obviously got the BAFTA nomination, and I was kind of predicting her to win that, but they went with Joanna Scanlon in Afterlove. But obviously I didn't predict her for the final nomination. I'm kind of glad I didn't, but it's kind of a shame I almost didn't predict her at the same time. Because like she obviously didn't get the nomination, but who was predicting that for a screenplay nomination? But that was pretty inspired, I would say. Um, the whole story, obviously, with this woman, where she wants to be with two certain relationships she has. One played by Andras Danielson Lai, who is actually a real life doctor in general and a part time actor, and he should have gotten recognized. And he's my personal supporting actor winner of 2021. Even though Troy Kotsur would still be my vote in terms of the Oscars, Andras Danielson Lai would have been my best supporting actor personal winner in my personal lineups. He was fantastic in this, or with another guy who runs this coffee shop, and obviously, my favorite scene, obviously with her, obviously turning the world at a massive standstill from a light switch, and then obviously just spending the rest of almost a few minutes with the young guy specifically, and just like, and obviously it's the scene where she kind of runs. Obviously, if you've seen the promotional material, the poster, and there's a lot of fantastic moments that occurred. I would say at least the prologue, chapter one, the final chapter, and the epilogue are probably the weakest things about the movie. But I think the performances in chapters two through I think nine, I think it is. I think it's a 10 chapter field. Um, it's kind of like the Power of the Dog, where it has like not too good starting beginnings with the prologue into the first chapter, or even the epilogue or the last chapter, but like the rest of the chapters from after the first one and before the last one, all fantastic here. Next up is 2022, and we are going to begin this off what many YouTube critics consider to be, or award show predictor critics, their number one movie of the year. After Sun, the directorial debut of Charlotte Wells, produced by Barry Jenkins and Adele Romanowski, which somebody basically explained as Moonlight but with white people and set in Ireland. And this earned a Best Actor nomination from Paul Mescal. A lot of people are going to not like about this choice, but I'm going to have to put this in E, but it would be an E+. I was really disappointed in this movie. It just kind of followed the typical, like, it's obviously like about this young father-daughter relationship status during this vacation trip, But there's a lot of things that really don't have a lot of unanswered questions about her father's like I don't know if it's like a drug problem or a health problem that he has, and obviously with our main girl's relationship status, especially when we see her in the future for a small portion of the movie. Frankie Corio does a fantastic performance as our female lead. She does give a fantastic performance in this film. Mescal, I just felt weird about his performance. I just really don't know about it. I don't know if it's just because the age almost feels like a little brother, no, little sister, older brother movie. More feels like it more so than a father and a daughter relationship. I don't know. It's just because it. I think it's because of Mescal's age, I guess. But there is a lot of young adult parents, obviously, of course, in today's standards, obviously. But I just think it just feels like there was something wrong with it. And I think it's just because it's more of her directing that's trying to be the standout more so than her writing. Um, and I think that could be the massive issue. Obviously, our main females try to do things around the park, like hanging out with older kids, or even making out with one of the kids around her age, or even trying to spend time with her father, but she's really trying to be a lot of independence of herself, and also even to find out a little bit more of her sexuality when we would find her what she would be in the future. And obviously with her use of the camera and even like filming and stuff like that, it just doesn't work for me. So I think maybe because with the Moonlight aspect with Barry Jenkins' involvement, yeah, I think that's the reason why I was really not disappointed with this film. Next up is Black Panther Wakanda Forever, which earned a supporting actress nomination for Angela Bassett, the first performance in a Marvel movie to do so, and earned a couple of nominations in the technical categories, giving Rihanna a nomination for her song Lift Me Up, but it won for costume design like the first film did. I am giving this one, I think I put the first one in a C, I believe, and I'm also going to put Wakanda Forever in a C as well. Um, I think I do like it better than the first film. I will admit that. And Angela Bassett does give a fantastic performance, but I think and obviously the story obviously about for Shuri to recover from her brother's death, because obviously with Chadwick Boseman's death they had to change a lot about this movie. So obviously it wasn't the filmmaker's fault, and it's just unfortunately colon cancer unfortunately had took Boseman's life, unfortunately, at a pretty young age. um but obviously with them making the decision not to recast T'Challa, and having Shuri to become potentially wants to become the new Black Panther, it did seem a lot of interesting. But obviously, with the whole villain aspect of the underwater portion, obviously, I think we can agree Avatar: The Way of Water probably did a lot of better job of the water side of the film more so than Black Panther did. Yeah, and then there's also like this still continuation story. I think Julia Louis Dreyfus with a relationship with some police officer that knows or agent that knows a little bit about Wakanda that she's trying to deal with, like she did in the first film. I did not like that. So yeah, like these like almost like Atlantis sea creatures. Like the final battle was okay. I think a lot of people would probably like it better than the first fight in the original film. But I think some of the visuals, yeah, it did not look that great. Some of the makeup were pretty good, and the costumes were good. Bassett was fantastic. She would have been my pick for supporting actress, although Jamie Lee Curtis would have been my second vote. But yeah, Bassett should have won supporting actress for me. Yeah, I do like it a lot better than the first film, but like the first film, I would not go back to Wakanda Forever. And now we're in Blonde, Andrew Dominik's 3-hour biopic on Marilyn Monroe, which earned Ana de Armas a sympathetic nomination for Best Actress. And you might know where this is gonna go. Yeah, this movie is not that great. It's basically almost like an anti hashtag Me Too movie. It's just basically telling you can fuck any woman you want, even if they're famous, like Marilyn Monroe or something like that. Like this almost feels like a movie Harvey Weinstein would have endorsed, even though he did produce My Week with Marilyn. So yeah, with My Week with Marilyn is the superior Marilyn Monroe movie. Andrew Dominik, along with Brad Pitt and his producing team, and yeah, Brad Pitt did produce this film, uh, basically, it's almost like making a fuck you to like women in general. Even though it's odd because Dee Dee Gardner did produce Women Talking. I believe that, yeah, that same year. So they produced, her and Germany Kleiner produced that and Women Talking the same year. So what did they produce this film when it was basically almost like an anti-women movie? They just thought it was great or something like that. It's just like, it just almost like views Marilyn Monroe as a sex thing, and just like too much of her relationships, whether it be from Adrian Brody or that one scene with JFK, or just like not even the 4:3 ratio cinematography could be the one thing that stands out, but it just doesn't. It's just like very uncomfortable for her and for the viewer in general with this NC-17 rating. It's just like it would have worked, but these dumb voters gave Ana de Armas a sympathetic nomination for all the bad stuff she had to do. So, like, that's not worth of an Oscar nomination. That's just saying for sympathy. I mean, yeah, this is definitely an acting Oscar nomination that is not going to age well in recent years. Michelle Williams easily superiors her to that. So, if you want a Marilyn Monroe biopic, watch My Week with Marilyn, not this Netflix Oscar bait shit. Next up is Causeway, kind of Jennifer Lawrence's return to the independent field, and earned a supporting actor nomination for Brian Tyree Henry. One of the few times another comedic actor doing a dramatic performance. I am giving this one a B. I do really like the story of obviously the script done here of telling obviously this female soldier that really wants to go back to the military, but obviously she can't with her massive injury she had, and nothing she had to do but just kind of doing, I think, maybe her father's footsteps or something like that by doing cleaning a lot of pools, and then meeting this other wooden warrior working on this car, and obviously, yeah, kind of dealing with this massive struggle recovering from this massive injury you were doing in the military, and just trying to figure out what to do while recovering without even though you want to go back and serve in the army, but you can't for requirements from your doctors. Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence really gives a subtle performance here, but the story really captivated. Brian Tyree Henry, I think he was fine. I would have probably casted somebody else. Like, not saying he was bad or anything. It's just that maybe if like we had Lawrence followed a lot of other characters other than Brian Tyree Henry's character, that was also Wounded Warrior. If there were more other Wounded Warriors that were still home, and not back in the military yet, I would really love to see where that would have gone to. Next up is Glass Onion, A Knives Out Mystery, the sequel to the 2019 film, which earned an adapted screenplay nomination. As you might have saw, obviously I found the first Knives Out to be overrated. I was really not looking forward to this, but I ended up becoming a massive surprise for this, and I'm actually putting this one in S. I ended up liking this a lot more so than the first film, and the thing is, I think the real reason why Glass Onion did work mainly is because you did had Benoit Blanc as a main character, because he felt more supporting in the first film, as was more about Marta Cabrera in the first film, and now it's kind of both about Craig's character, Benoit Blanc, and Janelle Monáe's character, where Craig takes the first act, both of them take the second act, and Monet takes the third act, and I think that worked so well. Where we would go into this movie from Benoit Blanc's perspective of being invited to this interesting party that was ruled by an Edward Norton's character, and obviously you get a lot of characters like Catherine Hahn, I think Leslie Odom Jr., and then you have Catherine Hahn and Kate Hudson, and obviously you also see Janelle Monáe's character, and everyone is looking at her as being the potential villain in this. And then when you go into the second act, you now go into the both of the characters' perspective and go back to the story where you start at the beginning of what was going on. And without giving much away, it's fantastic, not just from Rian Johnson's writing, but how they did the editing, pacing it, and his direction was fantastic. All the performances were great. This is a fantastic ensemble. Janelle Monáe really stood out here, and it's another great example of why some music artists can become great actors. Like with this and Hidden Figures, yeah, she really did a fantastic job in this film. You can even say Moonlight for her scenes. That, yeah, she really does also want to become a great actress other than just being a singer. I know she was category fraud in supporting, but yeah, she would have been in my best actress lineup. Craig is definitely great in his performance as Benoit Blanc here. Edward Norton as our main leader of this entire event. Also very fantastic. If he would have got another Oscar nomination before A Complete Unknown and after Birdman, it definitely would have been for this film. The production design is fantastic. There was at one point the movie was actually up for free on YouTube, and I did got to revisit a lot of my favorite clips in the movie and just revisit it. It just made me know how I really loved it more so than the first Knives Out. Next up is Living, and this is actually an English remake to Akira Kurosawa's Aikuru, I believe, about an old man. Kind of almost like I forget how he does it, but like almost builds a new playground, and I think that's kind of it. I wasn't really fond of the original film, and I wasn't really fond of this one. This got a Bill Nye his first Oscar nomination for Best Actor and Adapted Screenplay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put this one in E. It just there was nothing really a lot of changements when it came to adapting Kurosawa's film into the big screen here, into an English film here. Even with English dialogue, it just didn't really work well for me. The only good thing about this movie that I do remember the most is Amy Lou Wood's performance. She was fantastic in her scenes. With all of her scenes with Bill Nye, they were really great in her line. Bill Nye, excuse me. It's just I keep getting confused with the actor and the science guy at the same time. It's just odd they say this they are pronounced Nye at the same time, but they're spelled differently. But yeah, Amy Lou Wood's the only thing I do remember the most, and she ended up being my personal lineup of that year. But the rest of the film, other than maybe just the scene where our main character is on a swing, that's basically it. Now we come into our most controversial nominated film, not because of the film itself, but because of the nomination that came out of nowhere to Leslie, which earned Andrea Riseborough her Best Actress nomination, which caused a lot of controversy because there was a lot of rumors going on the week before the nominations that there was some sort of grassroots campaign on her from like a social media campaign to her to get a nomination for this performance for a very, very small indie movie. She did earn a Spirited nomination prior to it, but we were assuming she would have gotten in. But with her, Michelle Williams going leading for her supporting performance in The Fabelmans and giving a sympathetic vote to Ana de Armas, they nominated those two along with Andrea Riseborough for her grassroots campaigning nomination over Viola Davis in The Woman King and Daniel Odette Weiler in Till, which I've not seen both of those movies because they did not get no Oscar nominations. Now, when I saw To Leslie, I'm gonna have to give this one an E. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give this an E, but it's an E plus. It's not terrible. It's just that it kind of follows obviously this drunk woman throughout her journey and where she goes from like this homeless one from not really disassociating with her adult son. And then obviously then lives in this residential motel with this guy. I forget who played by Mark Maron, which who runs the motel and tries to do something about with this woman, and they kind of grow a little bit of fondness, and then they would do something of a passion that she would. I did kind of like that portion of the ending, but I wish that was a little bit more so for the rest of the film instead of just the ending, where they kind of do this little cafe place by the motel or stuff like that for her to run. Um, Other than Riseborough, Allison Janney's the only legit recognizable celebrity in this entire movie, but not the worst thing I've seen. I do prefer it over Ana de Armas and Blonde easily. And obviously Michelle Williams, even though I did like her in The Fablemans, but obviously that's a supporting performance. Maybe even over Kate Blanchett in Tar, I would say, but I would have given my vote to Michelle Yeoh because it's the only nomination I did like. But yet this film is almost feels like I've seen this type of movie before, where you have a movie starring a drunk woman. And then we are coming into Darren Aronofsky's The Whale, which earned a supporting actress nomination for Hong Chow and one for makeup and hairstyling, and Best Actor for Brendan Fraser, which was a massive resurrection of his career. Um, a lot of critics were very mixed on it, but everyone agreed they loved the performances, and I kind of do agree. I have to give this a C. It's going on C. So first up, let's get to the bad stuff out of the way. Fuck you, Darren Aronofsky and Samuel D. Hunter. That was a very offensive portrayal of obese people. That was just very offensive. It was just not that great directed, not great written, stuff like that. Yeah, big fuck you to both of them. But I will say this: The one thing that prevents it from being a terrible movie, and that everyone does agree, of course, I just mentioned, is the acting, and the ensemble is fantastic. They managed to get through this bad material and actually make their characters very likable, especially Brendan Fraser. And even though the movie's not that great, he did deserve that Oscar. He was my performance of 2022 for a not so good movie, but yeah, that was a worthy Oscar win. And even though, yeah, the portrayal is not that great, obviously, in terms of Aronofsky and D. Hunter's perspective of adapting that play into the movie, but his performance just really captivates in how likable this character really is and how innocent he is, especially when he reconnects with his daughter, played by Sadie Sink, who is also fantastic, who I prefer over Hong Chow. I think she should have gotten recognized and not Hong Chow. And Ty Simpkins, who plays Thomas, the young kind of like parishioner or something like that, that wants to join, have Fraser's character join this religious thing, and then obviously he has a real lot of change of thoughts. And Samantha Morton as his ex-wife for her one massive scene she has. Yeah, the acting is so phenomenal. Even though this movie has a bad portrayal of obese people, but the acting is the one thing I think you need to see, especially for Brendan Fraser's performance. Got 8 more films left, and we only have 4 for this one, and then 4 for the last one for 2023. And we are beginning this up with the musical adaptation of The Color Purple. Now, I will admit I have not seen Steven Spielberg's adaptation from 1985, to be precise, which is obviously the 85 Spielberg's adaptation's one of the biggest Oscar losers in history, next to The Turning Point, going 11 nominations and 0 wins. This one only gets a supporting actress nomination for Danielle Brooks. Now, I have not, since obviously this is not a remake to Spielberg's movie, although the musical is an adaptation of Spielberg's movie, but it's obviously not adapting this, even though Spielberg and Quincy Jones did produce this film, like they did in the original film. And I believe even Oprah Winfrey as well. I'm giving this one. I'm gonna get this a C. Yeah, I'm gonna give this a C. The story definitely seemed fine. I think having it being in a musical was probably my big issue, I would say, but the performances, some of these performances were pretty fantastic. From Taraji P. Henson, who I think was superior to Danielle Brooks. She should have been my personal pick in terms of the supporting cast. And she was definitely my number 2, I believe, that year behind Sadie Sink. Fantasia Barrino definitely does a fantastic job of her performance, and the fact that she really wants to go into the acting industry I heard she was asking for advice from some fellow actresses during an actress roundtable that she wants to do something like this. Halle Bailey, even though a lot of people got her, it really depends how people felt about her in the remake of The Little Mermaid. If you're not a racist, just based on the performance, I think she does a pretty good job in this adaptation. Actually, I really did like her in this one. Because obviously she just plays I think our main character's friend, in during her childhood days. Coleman Domingo really does that intense villainous role. I know it's not as famous as the Danny Glover one in the original film, in Spielberg's adaptation, but yeah, he really does a fantastic villainous job in his performance. Man, what an abusive guy based on the story on how he is. But for Brooks's performance, it's just mainly, I think, the first portion of the movie where her performance kind of stands out compared to when Taraji B. Henson comes in a little bit later on, changing our main character's life a bit when she's more of an adult. As for the music, I know I should be familiar with Mysterious Ways because obviously the original Broadway production in the 2000s had that in the Macy's Parade performance. I didn't really felt memorable in this film. The new song "Keep It Moving" that is in this movie, that actually was really a good song in the beginning. That was a pretty good one. Definitely should have been a better nomination, even though I have not seen American Symphony or The Flaming Hot. Now, our next 3 for the rest of the year are all Netflix films. And we begin this up with May December from Todd Haynes, I believe his 3rd film collaboration with Julianne Moore, and obviously also starring Natalie Portman and Charles Melton. This was a massive critic fan favorite, but it only earned an original screenplay nomination for The Husband and Wife of Sammy Birch and Alex Mechanic. I'm gonna have to give this one a D. I was a bit disappointed in this film. I was really looking forward to liking this because I do like Carol. I did like Far From Heaven. I even like Safe. Um, I think Julianne Moore's first film with Tom Hanks, but I was really disappointed in this film. Like, obviously, this is kind of loosely based on a real story of a teacher's relationship with a student, and they end up. Obviously, she paid some massive prison time, and then they would actually get married and have kids. And obviously now, we're focusing on a fictitious story where an actress is meeting this family as they're doing an actual biopic about this with Portman playing Julianne Moore's character, and she's trying to figure out what the situation is and also finding a difficult time with the relationships that all the family has, not just with her presence but also maybe even with the husband played by Charles Melton. Yeah, I wasn't really a fan of this film. Portman does a good job of her performance. And the makeup is fantastic, even though majority of that's coming from Julianne Moore's character, and you can even say Portman's hairstyling, for a modern touch on that. But yeah, I just didn't think this didn't really work well for me. Of like kind of understanding where an actress has to do actually meet the real life people to do this. I don't know if this like this obviously happens in a lot of biopic movies, but I'm not really sure about something like this. That just seems odd to me. And then we come into Naiad from Elizabeth Schreiber, Solly and Jimmy Chin, the directors of the Oscar-winning documentary Free Solo, and they would even do The Rescue. This is their first narrative feature, Naiad, about the famous female swimmer that swam, I believe, from the longest swimming from Cuba all the way to Florida. As Annette Bening plays Diana Naiad, with her entire swimming journey of almost like 6 attempts that she has to do in order for her to do this. It took her several years to do so and get to the massive team. Her best friend played by Jodie Foster. The main transport correspondent played by Ricey Fons. An entire team from mechanics to an entire sea crew and stuff like that. And then all the issues that they would have to go through all the attempts, including her getting stung by a jellyfish. A lot of critics were mixed with the film. I ended up really liking this movie, and I think this should have been Netflix's top candidate instead of Maestro. Oh, that was, well, more specifically Society of the Snow in general for a lot of people, but for me personally, this was my favorite Netflix film of that year. I have to give this one an A. It's just the unique direction of actually bringing these documentary filmmakers and bringing like retelling the story was probably the best way to do it. And with Benning giving a really great performance as Diana Nyad. Definitely a good one. Jodie Foster is fine. Ricey Fonts definitely should have been nominated for supporting actor. He was fantastic in it. Um, yeah, but I really loved how the entire movie was well paced, well shot. How well the whole journey is from Diana actually seeing where Diana's journey is of how they do all the swimming scenes. They probably didn't do that entire journey of recreating that, but more specifically, like of doing the entire mileage, that would have been too much. But I really didn't like how they actually really retold this told the story in a unique way that would almost be like a never before seen documentary or that we don't see, and even seeing all the her underwater moments and then all the failed journeys that she had to go through, and that's just really amazing. And finally, we have Rustin on the famous civil rights activist Bayard Rustin, which earned Coleman Domingo a Best Actor nomination. George C. Wolfe's follow up to Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I am giving this one. I'm gonna give this a D. The story definitely seemed very interesting of where Bayard Rustin does play a big, massive impact, especially for the Civil Rights March in Washington, D.C. But I feel like, and Domingo does a pretty decent job in his performance, but I think it might be the writing could be the biggest issue, and maybe George C. Wolfe's direction, because it almost feels like, unlike Selma, where it really does a good depiction of a good story in the civil rights movement of the march from Selma to Montgomery, and obviously it would have been a lot interesting to go into some of the other civil rights activists. I think this one did not work well. Um, it's just like, yeah, the makeup transformation Coleman Domingo does is fantastic. Um, but I feel like, and even on the technical aspect, but it just feels like I don't know what's missing in this movie because it feels like I don't feel like I'm knowing much about Bayard Rustin specifically personally, especially if I'm correct, he was gay in real life as well. Same thing with Coleman Domingo in general as well. Um, yeah, that was a decent casting choice, but I think I would have loved to see a little bit more personality in Bayard Rustin instead of like where his journey is as a civil rights activist. We're in the home stretch, folks. We are now into 2024, and once again, we do got four movies here, and we're gonna start this up a bit odd with The Apprentice, the Donald Trump biopic, that looks at about his how he became the most wealthiest man in America during the 80s. Obviously, it's directed by Ali Asaba, I believe, who did Return to Seoul. Um, this and I think Border as well, and this earned, of course, a Best Actor nomination for Sebastian Stan and a Supporting Actor nomination for Germany Strawn. I am gonna give this one. I'm gonna give this a C. The thing about it is, I do like this interesting interpretation of how of the origins of what would be our future president, what he was back when he was a good boy for some people, but there were some negative things like his relationship with his first wife, portrayed by Maria Bakalova, who's fantastic, and obviously some issues with his personal life that obviously do become true, like obviously the relationship with his brother that he really does care about, and also his business instructor and the friendship that he has with his mentor Roy Cohn, who is secretly gay, of course. Um, Germany Strong does a pretty good job in his portrayal, as well as Sebastian Stan does a decent job in his performance. But I think Maria Bakalova, for me, was the MVP of the cast. I think she should have gotten a supporting actress nomination. A lot of people think she just didn't do much, but I think her scenes were really that good, just showing. Yeah, because Trump did not had a had a struggling relationship history, of course. Um, the cinematography is fantastic, kind of going almost like this never before seen documentary, of course, about Donald Trump. The production design of how the early stages of Trump Tower would become, and obviously the makeup and the hairstyling was really good. But it specifically, I think it might be there are some scenes and maybe the script kind of prevents it from being a good movie. This is not based on political beliefs or anything like that. I just feel like um, it kind of does fall in a lot of stereotypical biopic formats. Even though this one had a pretty unique way of doing it, I just think it could have done a lot better. Next up is A Real Pain, Jesse Eisenberg's second featured film as a director, starring him and Kieran Culkin, who won for supporting actor in his lead performance. And it's basically about two brothers kind of reconnecting into, I think, to Poland to visit the place where their grandmother, who was a Holocaust survivor, and just exploring obviously not just the whole country, but also obviously honoring the love of the loss of all those that obviously lost, of course, during the Holocaust because they were Jewish. But obviously, Jesse's character obviously has a struggling relationship with his brother, played by Kieran Culkin, who has a serious issue going on. Not even during the back in the childhood days. Um, I'm gonna have to give this one a I'm gonna have to give this a D as well. A D. I just the problem with this, and I just realized, but The Apprentice in B, it's supposed to be in C. The thing about it is, I feel like it's just Culkin's character is just so unlikable throughout the first hour until you understand in Eisenberg's monologue he has in the dinner scene, and the rest of the supporting characters just doesn't really feel that memorable. It's just like we're just exploring the country, and there's just really nothing like a lot of comedic moments and stuff like that. It's just really kind of not a funny comedy. I think it's more of a drama, honestly. I think that could be the direction. So I would have not gone with Culkin or original screenplay. I really found this movie to be a bit overrated. I would have gone with Edward Norton for supporting actor, but I do agree with the Honora win for original screenplay. This movie almost did win original screenplay without getting a picture nomination. That almost would have happened, but that didn't. But A Real Pain did become the first film since Beginners to win supporting actor without getting a Best Picture nomination. So, yeah, guaranteed with Culkin's win for supporting actor. A Real Pain was definitely number 11 for Best Picture. Now we come into September 5, the biopic on the ABC Sports Studios coverage of the Munich massacre. I am putting this one in. I'm gonna put this one in um A, but it would be an A minus. I really do like how this story really tells the perspective of the Munich massacre from these journalists of broadcasting this event. Now, one thing to note is that it's very odd that this movie came out of the same year as No Other Land, and obviously this movie was being made before the war in Gaza began, just to let everybody know. I saw this movie, of course, 2 days after I watched No Other Land. Flo was in between during my marathon. Because after seeing them, I was like, I don't know which sides to go with it now. Because obviously, you have No Other Land. You're feeling angry at what Israel is doing in the modern times. And then at September 5, you're watching this movie and just being mad at Palestine, what they did during the past events. And obviously, both these countries still have this ongoing conflict still to this day. But just going by this movie in general, I really did like this film. Um, the script is definitely fantastic. I love that original screenplay nomination. The production design is really good, looking like what a TV studio looks like in the 70s. And just showing the entire coverage of this massacre from beginning to end, from probably a person's perspective that not even knowing what's going on, and then hearing what happens is kind of really blows our mind how live television events really change and impact when it comes to unfortunate tragic events like the Munich massacre. The cast is really great. John McGarrell does a fantastic job as the lead. A lot of our other supporting characters, Leo Benesch does a great job as the German translator, and just going through the entire experiences from all the journalists' perspectives. Um, really fascinates to me that when you want to do a side by side comparison of the actual broadcast event and this movie, it really seems a lot interesting to look at in the field of journalism, but also unfortunate tragic events that we are witnessing, that we would be witnessing live with them. And our last film in the non Best Picture top 8 movies is Sing Sing from Greg Widor and Clint Bentley, with Greg as the director, and them just being the Clint just being a writer. Obviously, they would switch with Train Dreams with Clint as the director. This earned an adapted screenplay nomination with them, the real John Devine, Gene Whitfield, and Clarence Macklin. Best actor for Coleman Domingo, and original song for Like a Bird, as this kind of focuses on John Devine, Gene Whitfield, who has been innocently accused of something, and throughout his time, he's been doing this theater act thing um, in this prison that they do. I think it actually called the Sing Sing prison. I believe they actually call it, which actually stars a lot of real life former inmates of the prison, including Clarence Macklin. In this, and while they're doing this iconic play of this unique, weird version of many different like stories into one comedy play or something like that. Yeah, if you're in the theater industry, you're definitely gonna really like this movie. But it obviously shows a lot of the innocence of some of the prisoners, or just like how guilty they were of the crimes they committed. I am putting this one in A as well. I really do enjoy this movie. Like of just understanding each of the personalities of these real life inmates, who they were. Obviously, as they're portraying themselves in this movie, with the exceptions of Coleman Domingo and Paul Raci as their instructor, are the only actual actors in the movie. The rest of them are played by themselves, and just shows like they're not just also their passion of acting, but even as well um, their way of kind of like their way of escapism of what they have done. And Clarence Macklin, playing himself, is fantastic in this line. He would have been a great nomination for supporting actor, and he would have been my personal pick for supporting actor. I really do like the screenplay nomination. That was a pretty good one. And just seeing the fun all these characters are having during their time of making this play and just working together as a team, it's just really unique to see that. All right, so here's the whole summary of this out of I believe 251 films. I was doing a little bit of counting in this, and if we go from double S tier to B, that's 124, and then from S to double F, that is 127. So we're kind of even on this one specifically because, yeah, there's a lot on the A tier and a lot on the E tier, and that just kind of really shows. And obviously for the double S tier, not as much as the picture one, but we did got three with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and my two favorite Pixar films. Not a lot on the S tier. I'm kind of surprised about that, but a lot on the A levels. Yeah, a lot in the E levels, but not much in the F. But obviously, we ended up getting four awful Oscar-nominated movies in the top eight with I Am Sam, The Lovely Bones, Hillbilly Elegy, and Blonde. So the 2010s managed to prevent away from getting into this tier, but the 10s and so far in this decade, with the first 5 years of the 2020s, they have not gotten a masterpiece just in terms of the top eight. Spencer was close if it did better with the supporting characters, but that's kind of it. So, yeah, a lot of overrated films here, a lot of underrated films here on this list. Obviously, a lot of people would disagree with me on some of these, and a lot of people will agree with me on a couple of these. So with that, that basically wraps up the Oscar tier list video of the non-Best Picture top 8 movies that were just nominated for directing, the acting categories, and the screenplay categories. So if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, check out the playlist of also on the Best Picture tier list if you have not seen that. These one will also be added to the tier list playlist as well. Next time, I'm hoping to do the international feature one and then documentary and animated feature. Um, but there's a bit of a difficulty situation when it comes to some of the films I have to watch. Not because of the subtitles or anything, but it's kind of hard to find for some of those films, so it might be a bit. But hopefully, I really want to get these before the Oscar nomination. So, which one of the three medium cinemas will come next? We'll just have to wait and see. So thank you guys for watching this 5-part retrospective, and I hope you had a good time listening to these.